Hey, thank you very much for coming here today. I am extremely pleased to announce that the Board of Education and the United Teachers of Wichita have reached a tentative agreement for 2018-19. With the return of interest-based bargaining process, we are so pleased that the teams have been able to collaborate and problem solve to reach a tentative agreement before the school year begins. This is something that hasn't occurred for several years. On behalf of the Wichita Board of Education, we want to thank the teams for their work on behalf of more than 4,000 teachers and certified staff members who inspire and educate Wichita students every day. This tentative agreement is subject to teacher ratification and the Board of Education's approval. With that, I am very pleased to introduce our superintendent, Dr. Alicia Thompson.
First of all, let me say, as the superintendent of this great school district, I am so pleased to be before you today to share the details of our tentative agreement with the United Teachers of Wichita. As we prepare to welcome nearly 500 new teachers to our district tomorrow, having a tentative agreement before the school year begins is such an uplifting position to be in. I want to thank the Board of Education team and the UTW team for their hard work during this process. Highlights of the tentative agreement are: base salary is an increase of 3.65%. The minimum increase that every certified employee will receive. One step for all teachers who are eligible to advance. Tracks honoring additional education. The longevity payments for veteran teachers are unfrozen, and no change to the employment health program or premiums. The compensation package is valued at 4.85%. The tentative agreement also includes additional non-monetary items that are important to our teachers and our district, and those items include additional time for teachers who work with special education students to complete paperwork, reporting of grades as defined intervals for teachers, the addition of 2 peer consultants to coach and support our first-year teachers, and Marzano evaluation elements are adjusted from 23 elements to 10. Ms. Logan, Mr. Rohde, Mr. Reeser, and Mrs. Crable are here with us today. Would you please acknowledge our board members that are here with us today? They and their colleagues on the Wichita Board of Education affirmed through our recently approved strategic plan that investing in staff is one of the most important ways that we can empower our students to dream, believe, and to achieve. As superintendent, I can tell you that their leadership and their belief and support in staff is valuable, and we appreciate them for their efforts. Board of Education members, thank you very much. I am pleased now to introduce to you Mr. Steve Wentz, who is the president of the United Teachers of Wichita. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent and members of the board. I want to thank Dr. Thompson for her leadership the last year, and members of the board for all of their hard work, particularly this last year. You know, I think this shows what happens when there's listening along with talking. We've done a lot of talking, myself included. In fact, Mike just told me I had to keep it under 20 minutes. But there was a lot of really good listening that went on. Both sides, if you will, within the IBB team had what we like to refer to as some courageous conversations with it, which at times may have been sort of contentious, but no one lost their cool. and we really did problem solve, and I'm looking forward. I'd like to acknowledge Chris Went for his leadership in that as well. Thank you, Chris. So, going forward, I think the best thing that we have going for us is a continuation of the interest-based bargaining process. We're going to meet within a month and start talking about some of these items that aren't necessarily tied to money. And we're looking forward to getting some of those knocked out even before we go into negotiations officially for the next contract year. Dr. Thompson and I are both Heights Falcons, and that's not as important, I think, as having roots here in this city. I'm committed, and she is too, to working together to make this school system even better than it is, and to make it one that is a destination district, as it was at one point, where people want to come here and want to teach and set up families and whatnot. So I believe this is a step in the right direction. We have a long ways to go. I know there's colleagues of mine that are stuck, if you will, in some parts on the salary schedule because of past freezes. I've already said that as long as I'm the president, we would never agree to a freeze, and thank goodness we haven't had that come up. And we're going to talk about that. That was one of the issues that I asked the board to look at Monday night. They did. It's been acknowledged that we have people in there that may be on their 13th or 14th year or 12th year and they're really only getting paid at where they were at 9 or 10. So that needs to be worked on and resolved. Tomorrow there's going to be 500 teachers looking at a salary schedule that, the idea is this is where you're starting, and in a number of years you can be over here. We need to be sure that that is followed through on, and that we all work together to make sure that that happens. And with that, that's my closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, we will entertain questions if you have questions, and Steve Wind is here to help answer those because he was the board side. Chris, I beg your pardon. Chris Wind is here to answer your questions. Chris?
Hi, good morning. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
When will this go to teachers to vote? What's the timeline?
I think, and I'll look at Steve, we were looking at next week perhaps, like early next week?
Yes.
Okay, early next week.
When are you hoping to have?
We're going to work on it immediately, but our plan is a week from Monday and Tuesday, I believe. I don't have my calendar in front of me. 13th and 14th, the last 2 days of in-service. The district will give us some time during those days to conduct it. It will be a paper ballot.
I know one of the issues that was brought up during negotiations was behavior in the classroom, that sort of thing. Were there any changes to the contract regarding that, or what's happening with that?
No, there weren't any contractual changes that happened during our negotiations. We did acknowledge some of the concerns that the UTW team brought to us, and we're going to continue to problem solve on some of those things.
I would just add to that I think the creation of the Bryan Academy is a step in the right direction. It's only going to serve a very small number of kids that need our assistance. But there was acknowledgement from administration and leadership that adherence to the contract when we talk about kids removed from class and coming back is going to be followed. And again, none of this in the past was anything that was malicious. I think we have communication issues, and we want kids in class. We all do, the United Teachers as well. But we need to make sure that everybody's having that opportunity to learn. So.
I might also just add that thinking about the mental health work that we're doing this year, and I know that we had a board presentation about that as well, that's also going to help with some of the concerns that I think were brought to us.
For those who may not understand how the longevity works and how that is now being unfrozen, could you kind of step through that, explain how that's going to work?
Sure. Longevity works as when we have teachers in the district and they hit a certain number of years of service, then they receive additional compensation for those years of service. And there are increments every so often throughout the contractual obligations, 15 years, 20 years. Then the longevity payments increase depending on years of service.
How many teachers would you say are impacted by that who've been frozen for past years?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question. Go ahead.
How many teachers, I guess, have been frozen from those longevity years?
Can I make a correction? That was a misspoke. It was unfrozen last year, so it's continuing on.
Right. There was no freeze. Everybody has continued for the last couple of years. Correct. There was no freeze last year.
I'm not sure that we have the numbers exactly. I know that we figured there were 1,600 teachers that had been affected by freezes in general. So, you know, I don't know how many of those it was in longevity, but you got to understand there were some people who last year, I don't know that unfrozen is a word, but I guess you wouldn't say that they were thawed, whatever. So there were some people that received it for 1 year and then all of a sudden didn't. And, you know, we need to do better on that. And I think everyone who cares about public education needs to know that August 7th and the first week of November are the crucial dates we all need to remember.
So basically reinstated last year.
Yes.
Chris or Dr. Thompson, I'm wondering if one of you can comment on this compensation package for teachers marks a huge chunk of the additional funding you'll be getting from the state. What are your comments on that? Why, what will that mean to other programming that you might want to implement?
Well, we know the Board of Education has made it very clear that one of their priorities is investing in staff. And it doesn't matter what kind of program you have, it doesn't matter about any of that if you don't have good staff and that you can retain good people in your organization. So we, as a board, the Board of Education instructed us clearly that investing in our staff is the most important thing.
And I'll just add to that, you know, that is a change, I believe, in philosophy, which is sort of lends itself to what I've been talking about is you have to put on your own oxygen mask before you put it on the kids. And I think as well-intended programs we had in the past, if you don't have people that are staying and believe in it and you can retain them, then that doesn't really matter. So I'm very appreciative.
Steve, I wonder if you haven't been a fan of interest-based bargaining in the past. Are you now?
Now, wait a minute. I didn't say I was never a fan of interest-based bargaining. What I was involved in it a good number of years ago, and in my opinion, it didn't work very well. I'm not sure what was done prior to me taking office was actually interest-based. But look, whatever you call it, I don't really care. I'm a fan of communication, and I have had to learn to be a good listener. My adult children would tell you that, and that's a key part of it. So, you know, whatever you call it, the fact that people are listening and reflecting back what people have said and making sure clarifying of questions and points is huge. So certainly in this aspect, I think it was beneficial for all of us.
You mentioned that the number of elements of Marzano has been reduced from 23 to 10. What does that entail? I mean, what is there a different focus on that? Or?
Right. Without getting into a lot of weeds, there are 23 elements that our teachers are evaluated on this past year. When we've looked at our data and looked at research and looked at high yield, we realized that we can actually get a lot of lift from 10 elements. So reducing from 23 to 10 will actually give us, instead of going maybe mile wide, inch deep, we're able to go a little deeper, give better feedback to our teachers, and also improve the instruction that our kids are getting.
I'm not real familiar with how is there a contract involved with Marzano? Are there financial?
The state requires us, right? The state requires us to have an evaluation system, and so in that regard, we will work with the state to ensure that the elements and the evaluation system that we choose are aligned. And the state has recognized Marzano as one of those groups.
Would you consider this a walking back of Marzano?
Not necessarily, no. What I think it is it's, again, just more of, when we look at data, and we always try to be a data-driven district, when we look at the 23 elements and we see where our students are and where we need lift, when we looked at the 23 and then we looked at the 10, we realized that we could get a lot of lift from the 10. And Dr. Irving was also very instrumental in looking at those 10 and understanding that if we did these 10 and did them well, and our teachers do these 10 and do them well, that we're going to get the kind of lift we want to achieve our strategic goals in our district.
Moving forward from this, Mr. Wentz, what are still some concerns for teachers?
Well, we have a list that we put together, and we'll share that out. That involve a number of things, of course, workload, special ed. You know, I think one of the things that's in here that ought to be emphasized is the contract stipulates 1 day a year for SPED teachers to do their IEPs. Correct me if I misspeak here. We've increased that to 2.5. And that's a big gain. But there's a number of things that we brought up that were ones that are just going to have to be problem solved. Student behavior is certainly one of them. But I think, as I said earlier, the idea of figuring out from a compensation package what we can do for those teachers that have kind of been stuck in a really unfortunate part is a piece of that.
Cheryl, could you comment from the board's perspective on this contract, what your thoughts on it?
The board is very pleased. We believe in our teachers and our staff, and we have committed the funds to show them that. And, you know, obviously we wished it could be 10 times this. We don't have that kind of money, but we certainly gave them everything we could, because good staff is what we need in order to produce the results that we want with our students. So good staff makes a good district. So we are extremely pleased.